In the marketplace of an Arabian town, our story is told. A story bearing a lesson from which all of us can learn. Among craftsmen still plying their ancient skills, there is a family of sword makers, for 3 generations, creators of the finest swords in the province. This day marks the end of the labors of father and son, a sword ready to be delivered, the finest product of their craftsmanship. Hurry, the father urges, and be sure to guard the sword well. Within the Mejlis, the elders of the community await the gift that will soon be presented to their leader, Sheikh Abdullah ibn Said, in honor of his efforts on behalf of the people of the community. For Nasser, as he's ushered into the council chamber, his moment has come as he presents the sword. The Sheikh seems pleased, and Nasser rejoices. But the gaze of the Sheikh is drawn to an inscription from the Koran engraved on the scabbard. And God hath given you hearing, sight, and heart, for which you should give thanks. And therein lies the point of our story, the importance of good vision. It begins one day several months earlier, when the father of Nasser hastened to bring his son the good news that of all the swordsmiths in the town, they had been selected to fashion a sword for Sheikh Abdullah ibn Said. There is not much time, the father says. Our success will depend on you, my son. For my own hands have grown feeble and my eyesight dim. Nasser reassures his father. Have no fear. I will put my heart and mind into the sword. It will be the best we have ever produced. And under the warming confidence of Nasser, the anxiety of the father is quieted. Later that day, wandering through the marketplace, Nasser came upon Ibrahim, whose vision had long gone. Ibrahim, in years past the greatest swordsmith of all, until blindness stilled his hand. But Nasser's mind is fixed on a dream, the ornamentation he will design on the scabbard of the sword for the Sheikh. Then to work, performing the many intricate steps necessary to fashion the blade handle and scabbard. Day after day, Nasser toiled over the scabbard and the blade handle, while his father worked at his side, anxious that nothing should interfere in carrying out their mission of a sword for the Sheikh. One day, resting from his labors, Nasser watched people go past in the souk. And all at once he observed Ibrahim, his fellow craftsman of the past. Nasser invited the blind man to join him in his tea drinking. As Ibrahim talked of his lost art, Nasser asked what had brought about his blindness. It had been long in coming, said Ibrahim, begun many years ago with an itching, a slight annoyance, a watering of his eyes, a little pain relieved by rubbing. Later had come the feeling of a grain of sand irritating his eyeball. If only he could relive those early days, the old man moaned. For he had paid little attention to these minor annoyances, and in time they had grown more severe. As he listened, Nasser recalled that he too suffered from a similar distress in his eyes. But then he shook off the thought. Years later, Ibrahim went on, he had suffered a loss of vision, inability to make out small detail in his work. And then gradually came the final blow, as a cloud appeared before his eyes. A cloud which in time darkened into endless night. As he returned to his home, Nasser had completely forgotten the words of Ibrahim, for his mind was filled with a great vision, the sword for Sheikh Abdullah ibn Said. Within his home, Nasir saw, but gave little significance to common household scenes, to the flies on his infant's face. About him he saw other familiar household activities, use of headgear to wipe his older child's face, use of a single towel for all members of the family, the eyeshadow stick used by all. The next morning, a warning of the future touched the eyes of Nasir, but he failed to heed it. He must get to work on the sword for the sheikh. Began intricate ornamentation for the scabbard. Here, Nasir needed every skill at his command, clear vision and a steady hand. But as he worked, Nasir became aware of an irritation in his eyes, continued watering, a burning feeling, a little pain. As the days went by, scroll work on the scabbard began. Again, that prickly feeling, growing more and more unbearable, making it difficult to continue. Though the father of Nasir had observed his son's distress, he had held his tongue. But now, greatly troubled, he can no longer remain silent. It is nothing, Nasir tells his father, a minor irritation that will soon pass. But the father remains concerned. Under the constant strain of this small detail work, the vision of Nasir grows worse, and the anxiety of his father increases. Outdoors, sunlight irritates Nasir's eyes. To his father, Nasir's idle tool spelled disaster, possible failure to deliver the sword of the sheikh at the promised time. As Nasir wanders through the market, a symbol of misfortune crosses his path. Ibrahim. As he recalls the old man's story, the full impact of the warning strikes him. Now a great fear sweeps Nasir. Will his eyes also lose their vision? He must obtain help at once. Quickly, Nasir reaches the nearby doctor's office and enters. Within, he encounters Dr. Abdul Latif, who invites Nasir to be seated and state his trouble. Nasir describes the irritation, and the doctor then makes his examination. Dr. Abdul Latif tells Nasir he suffers from a disease of the eyes called trachoma. But Nasir is fortunate that he did not delay in seeking medical aid. His trachoma still is in its early stage, can be successfully treated. God has given mankind the great gift of vision, the doctor tells Nasir, but it is for us to guard this gift with care. Look, Nasir, the doctor says, the human eye, a most delicate instrument. And what a pity that today, all over the world, the eyes of millions of people are affected by this disease. Throughout nearly every region, men, women, and children, frequently infants in the first few months of their lives. Trachoma, the doctor tells Nasir, is caused by a tiny germ, so small that it can be barely seen by the most powerful microscope. This germ enters the eye and grows in the moist tissues under the lids and covering the eyeball, causing an irritation such as your own. Now Nasir learns that if this condition is neglected, in time a more serious stage of trachoma will result, with the eye sorely inflamed, with granulations covering the inner surfaces of the lids. But even in this stage, the doctor says, with medical treatment, the condition can be cured. But if untreated, the disease continues, reaching a further development. the lids and lashes turned inward, scar tissue appearing to form a curtain over the eyes, a condition for which little can be done because of these many years of neglect. Then Nasser sees trachoma in its final stage. White scar tissue thick over the eyes, causing increasing loss of vision. All come about, says the doctor, from a tiny beginning, from a minor irritation of the eye, such as that afflicting you. But how does one keep from contracting this disease, Nasser asks. The doctor explains that trachoma is a contagious infection, easily passed from one member of the family to another through unhygienic habits in the home. And as the doctor describes these habits, Nasser recalls what happens in his own home. Flies that carry the germs of this disease permitted to rest on the baby's face, the infant handled by someone who already is infected with trachoma. The sleeve or gutra used to wipe the faces of members of the family. Use of a common family towel which can pass the infection from one person to another. Also the use of a common eyeshadow stick bearing the germs of the disease, transmitting them from the sick to the healthy. These were the things the doctor told Nasser before going to his cabinet for a medicine to treat the infection. Medicine which Nasser must apply to his eyes regularly. But Nasser must also bring his family for examination, for often, if trachoma strikes one member of the family, it will strike all. Hastening home, Nasser recalled the doctor's words. Trachoma is a contagious disease, easily transmitted from one member of the family to another through unhygienic personal habits. To protect his newborn son from the dangerous flies, Nasser installed a net over the crib, barring his child from contact with the dangerous insects. But there were other family habits he must correct. He stopped the mother from further use of the cloak to wipe the faces of his children. He stopped further use of the common eyeshadow stick. Also use of the soiled family towel by all members of the family. No longer would a single family towel be used in Nasser's home. Instead, an individual clean towel for each member of the family. And so, step by step, Nasser corrected those unhygienic habits in his home that endangered the vision of his family. But there was yet an important step to take, bringing his entire family for examination and treatment by Dr. Abdul Latif. Only then could Nasser be sure that he had fully protected his home. Regularly, according to the doctor's instructions, Nasser applied the medicine to his eyes and saw that each member of his family did likewise, remembering what Dr. Abdul Latif had said, that even after being cured, the eyes could be infected again. Meanwhile, with his irritation relieved, Nasser had resumed work on the sword for the Sheikh. Each day, Nasser observed those hygienic practices that helped keep the germ of trachoma from the home. Washing his hands often. A bed net to bar the dangerous flies. A clean face cloth for each member of the family. A clean towel for each member of the family. Application of the medicine to each family member's eyes. Finally, the day came when the sword and scabbard for the Sheikh were nearly finished. Now, Nasser searched his mind for an inscription to engrave on the scabbard as a symbol of the feeling in his heart. What words could be written to express his joy? Suddenly, passing a shop, whom did Nasser see but Ibrahim? Now came the answer to his search. Is it not written in the Koran, "And God hath given you hearing, sight, and heart, for which you should give thanks"? The day had come to deliver the sword. But first, Ibrahim had been invited to the shop to inspect the handiwork of Nasser. For was it not he whose story had inspired the inscription on the sword for the Sheikh? Even more important, was it not he who had forewarned Nasser of the danger of trachoma, the disease that had stolen his own sight? From this experience, had not Nasser been made aware of his dependence on good vision? Had he not also learned how to care for his eyes and those of his family? How to prevent trachoma in everyday household activities, as well as the importance of seeking proper treatment when disease threatens one's vision? A sword for the Sheikh, a story bearing a lesson from which all of us can learn. Beware of trachoma, the thief of man's vision. Make sure today that you and your family protect yourselves from this danger.